Welcome everybody. Thank you for coming along and joining us online and here in London. We've got a great presentation for you tonight with Chris, who's he's got quite a lot of things to get through. He says that he'll be covering stuff that very often ends up taking a day's course. So your mind should be buzzing with really useful information and ideas by the time you finish this. And so I think I'll hand over and let Chris introduce himself and his topic.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. Thank you for the warm welcome, guys. This is a snippet from what we usually cover in a day's course, so we'll cover that in a second, and I'll be led by you guys. It's quite an intimate environment today, so if there's particular areas of interest, I'm happy to pause, spend a bit more time going through that as a discussion point as well. So I'll probably go about 60, 75 minutes in total, including discussion as we go through it. If it's me droning on for 60, 75 minutes, I'll get bored, let alone you guys. So please interject as we go through and feel free for questions. Is that okay? Right, okay, so what's this about today? Bit of a catchy title. It's about simplifying how you enable people to get things done. It's a bit of a model, it's a bit of process, a bit of tooling, a bit of data, all combined together to create an effective and optimized way of working. In the IT arena, in the service management arena, quite often we can think about just transactions. Someone wants something, they get it. Someone's got an issue, it gets resolved. What about how they feel? What about the experience that they have? Yes, they can't go anywhere else. You know, the internal IT organization, or HR, if that's a support organization, or finance, that's the only finance, HR, IT function they can go to. But we still need to make them feel like they belong, that they be part of the solution, that they get the experience they need, so they can be as productive as they can be. And that's what today's session is about. How can we do that? How can we simplify that as well? To narrow it down a little bit further, we'll do an introduction to me and other bits and pieces in a minute, but I wanted to go on to context first. The clicker will work. Okay, that does. Just this wonderful word, digital. Been used loads of times over the last 20 years. Digital transformation, another buzz term. I'm just going to try and focus in about what this session today is going to cover. This is not going to be the purple section. It's not about strategic digital transformation. It's not about the technical products, digital products, that are provided to your company's end customers. That's banking app, for example. You've got HSBC, they provide a banking app. That's a digital way of interacting with their customers, their external customers. We're not doing that today, so apologies if that disappoints anyone. No one's just stood up to leave. What we are talking about is most of the green section, which is about optimizing ways of working through effective use of technology. It is your people, your organization, their way of working and how they interact with each other. Now, there's three layers to this. You've got operational digital transformation, which is the way you support your end customers, not how you sell products and services, but how you support them. So if there's a complaint or an issue that someone's having with a banking app, how do you get it to come through to customer services of some description to address that issue? Underneath that, you've got enterprise service management, which is the way a department within your organization supports another department. And then focus point, IT service management, which is the IT department from the enterprise. Okay, what we're focusing on today is enterprise service management, which includes ITSM. Are we all in the right place? Yeah, good. All right. Another bit of context setting. As mentioned earlier, this is part of a wider course that we offer. It's usually 2 4-hour courses, just so it doesn't frazzle the brain too much. And it's part of what we call getting fit for service management, optimization, transformation, whatever word you want to call it. And we've got a 12-step journey that we go through. And the first step on there is what we're doing part of today. What does good look like? When we work with organizations, can we align on a vision of what good looks like? Let's do that right at the start, before the project's even started, so that everyone's got that shared view and that shared vision. And challenge it. And please today, as we go through, challenge it, raise questions, disagree. So that at least at the point that we're going to start the project, we've got that all out in the open. And that we've understood what that shared vision looks like. And that we can feel like this is the right direction that we want to go in. So that's what we do. It covers service management basics and fundamentals, some of which we're covering today. And we spotlight on 7 or 8 different service management practices between what framework you use, whether it's ITIL, IT for IT, USM, lots of different frameworks out there these days. We try and bring them all together to create a centralized way of working. You'll also notice that towards the end, for those that have read ahead, on step 11, we do the same thing again. But rather than this now being with the core team, the senior leaders of IT organizations and anyone in the service management organization, we conduct the same thing with everyone in the IT organization and essentially wider. The IT business partners that go out to HR, the business relationship managers, they get involved as well. It's a slightly shorter course, but it goes through that shared vision as well. It's already gone through leaders, they've agreed on it. It's gone through design principles, it's gone through implementation principles. We prioritize what we want to do. And then we go back out. But again, before we've even started on the journey of execution, we've gone and shared that vision and hopefully agreed that vision with everyone else that's going to interact with it. Because those are the people you serve. It's that feeling, it's that making sure that they feel valued, that they get the service that they deserve so they can be as productive as possible in their day. Okay, that makes sense? Okay, good stuff. Now an introduction to me and who I am. So I'll set the context first. I work for a company called Mason Advisory. This is not going to be a sales pitch. Please throw things at me if it gets too salesy. I just wanted to let you know who we are. We provide 5 different areas of service, which you can see up there in that little donut diagram. I just want to focus a little bit about on the approach we take. We do delivery with our clients so that they can then be independent and self-dependent very quickly. We're not there to stay forever and a day. And we value ourselves based on the feedback we get from our clients. And we've won awards. These days you can pay for awards. So I'm not going to go down that route, but the MCA Management Consultants Awards, they're voted for by our clients and other people's clients. I'm really proud of the awards that we've won. We've got our own standards as well, ISO, Cyber Essentials, etc. And we're also we treat our people very well. About 110 consultants now. I've been around for about 25 years in different guises, current guys, 8-9 years. But yeah, that's who we are as a company. And who am I? Chris Good. And I've been in the wonderful world of service management, project and portfolio management now for coming up to 22, 23 years. I have worked in lots of different organizations, different industries, Aviva, AstraZeneca, Deutsche Bank, EY, Pets at Home, and others in between, universities. So I've got a fairly broad experience of how people have been operating in those different settings, but they tend to all have very similar challenges. Doesn't matter if you're a 440,000 organization like EY, down to a couple of hundred people in some of the organization working, it's very similar challenges, it's just scale. We'll take some of the learning from my colleagues at Mason Advisory to create this methodology, which we're going to be going through today. So that's a bit about me. Any questions so far on the context? Okay, let's move on. So the agenda for today, so I'm going to go quick recap. I'd summarize it right at the start, but going on to objectives and the principles for the session today. We're then going to go through common problem statements, and I'll be playing back to you. Maybe some of them resonate to you, maybe some other problem statements that you have. Let's go through some of those. And then before we get into simplifying how to get things done, we're going to talk about run versus change. Some of you may be familiar with that concept already, run and change, maybe not. It's critical that we've got that shared understanding at the beginning before we go into more service management activity. A lot of people have still got the old 1990s noughties view that service management is just about BAU, it's run. Yeah, it's support, it's instant fix on fail. It's not. It's got a lot more than that. It's the end-to-end solution, all the way through from an idea and a project that needs to be implemented and transitioned effectively. And yes, the ongoing support and operation of it covers everything. So run and change, really key concept to get the head round to begin with. Then we'll be going into operating model. The key thing I want to get through today here is customer and supplier engagements. I'm hoping there'll be a few light bulb moments as we go through. That's a bit of a useful diagram that's going to come up. And that's starting to go through simplifying how to all about customer and supplier engagement. And then we'll spotlight onto 2 areas, given the topic that was on the agenda for today. Service catalogue, #1 practice. It's your foundation to everything. The clue is in the title, service management. If you don't know what your services are, manage them. Doesn't matter what practice out of 34 and ITIL, if you don't understand your services, you don't understand who's using those services, how they're using them, you may as well not bother. You've got to get that foundation right. And then linked into that, we're going to be talking about service request management. we'll do a quick recap at the end. A worthwhile investment of potentially 75 minutes of your time today. We've got lots in the room here, so I'm hoping the guys on the chat are the same. Right, so objectives, thought through already. Basic principle here, not to put the onus on your users on having to navigate your organization. That's the absolute crux of effective enterprise service management, including IT service management. Don't get them so if you need this, you need to go to this person, or if you need that, you go to that portal, or go, I'll just chat to this. No, it's got to be simple. It's got to be clear. It's got to be intuitive. You shouldn't need tutorials or policy documents. It should just be easy. It should be consumer grade. You think how you interact with whoever you use for your utility bills, or when you go and book a hotel. It's that type. We are in hospitality. What we do is hospitality. We've got to take that approach to it. We've got to provide customer delight. And that's the approach we try and enforce in some of the principles I come through today. So principles wise, be present. You've invested time to come to here today or attend on the virtually. So please be present. I know we get distractions quite a lot. There will be questions for me as we go through. I'll even do some short quizzes. Please humour me with some responses. That would be much appreciated. We try and make this interactive. No suffering in silence. If there's something I go through is too quick or it doesn't make sense, please put your hand up, stop me. I'm happy to go back through it. If you're thinking it, I'm sure someone else is also thinking it. As I mentioned at the beginning, the agenda will be dictated by you guys a little bit, as well as the pace. Depending on where you want to go with this, I can go into a bit more detail or bring it up a level. And as again mentioned before, challenge, there is no single one way, and taking your own views for your organizations will help with the thinking, help with the understanding. Is that okay?
So really is simplifying just allowing IT to become an enabler and a facilitator rather than that old, as you mentioned, the old kind of 90s version of sitting there, we're the experts, we're looking after this very technical thing that you probably don't understand. Here's a really complicated practice that we've taken from a technical manual, and there you go. As long as you follow the process, everything will get done. It means that we can sit in our little IT ivory tower and hide behind that process and not actually get stuff done.
And various frameworks, again, especially ITIL 4 and the change from ITIL 3 is about co-creation, partnership, value streams. And that's a very admirable approach to take and where we should be getting to. What I'll be trying to go through today is some practical aspects of that. Make it real, bring it to life. So that you do have a partnership approach in play, but recognize that it always comes back to someone wants something that's provided by someone else. You can't get away from that. You can't co-create sometimes. It's I can't do this because I don't have the access or the knowledge or the awareness, but you do. How do I get that to come together and work? And that's what we're going through today.
Sorry, I would say it's a bit of the work of a systems analyst, isn't it? So you have to look at what you will be doing and put your thoughts forward, talk to the consumer, and to whoever wants your system, and develop it. But in a small, I suppose in a smaller pace.
It may not be a system analyst as such. It's system in the subject of systems thinking. It's more about business process re-engineering. And that's where your analysts will come into play to support streamlining, making that process more effective and more efficient. So it's not good enough to just be efficient and effective. In this day and age, you've got people coming in that have got consumer grade experiences all the time. To retain talent in an organization, they don't want to raise something done in 5 days' time, it's disappeared into a black hole. They expect immediacy of response and service. Otherwise, talent will walk out the door. They'll go elsewhere. So it's about designing those ways of working with some technology that comes into it as well. So it provides that great experience that we should be providing, even though they're internal colleagues. Doesn't mean to say they should get any less of a service.
So we're aiming to give our colleagues and everyone the same level of customer experience. You know, we should be thinking of them, as we should for a long time, that they are customers, even though the product that they're getting is our job effectively.
Exactly that. Exactly that. And what we're going through today will be the practical aspects of that and some recommendations and some little thoughts that might go off in your head with your experience you're having at the moment with your internal operations. So actually, maybe that could work. Or maybe that could work, but I mean, need a little bit more of a discussion on that one. That's what I'm trying to do today. Some food for thought with some practical applications of this.
Can I just say, I look forward to you giving us some tips on how we can manage to give like one channel of service to everybody in the organization, even though there are multiple providers behind that, because that's often been challenging, very challenging in the past, especially, you know, you mentioned IT, HR facilities, and they've got their own boxes, and I'd love to see ways that you can help people get that into one big stream.
I didn't pay you to say that, by the way, but that's brilliant. That's exactly what we're going to be going through. So there's a nice discussion point we'll go through.
I think it comes like you were saying, think of it at hospitality. We've got to think about it as other industries think about it, because the principles are still the same. You know, it's when you phone a crisis helpline, there is multiple services behind that and how it's streamlined. And we need to do that within the IT industry as well, of going, it's your single point of contact. You don't need anywhere else. We'll make sure you go to the right place natively.
Exactly that. Exactly that. Okay, good discussion. Thank you. This is exactly how I'd like it to be. Open discussion, open debate. So in opinion time, some of which you may have mentioned already, just maybe 2 or 3 of you have got a particular view. Again, you took the time out of your day to attend this evening. Anything specific when you saw the agenda, anything specific you'd like to get out of today's investment? Putting you on the spot now. Okay, again on the chat, I don't know if anyone's got anything specific. Got from Jog, will you be able to touch on collaboration between suppliers in multi-supplier environment, which is the similar comment that was in the room a minute ago. Yes, absolutely, we'll be covering that. Anything else? No, okay, that's all right, no worries. I was just trying to make sure that we again tailor it to the specific.
So Chris, we did have sorry, I'm a bit late to the party. We did have a question from Jog. Chris, will you be able to touch on collaboration between suppliers in a multi-supplier environment?
Yes, yeah, definitely. We'll cover that off.
Awesome.
No worries, we'll do that under the operating model section.
Excellent, thanks.
Okay, all right. So now we're going to do some problem statements. 3 personas for you. Hopefully these all resonate. A few definitions to go through. Customers. They're the people that pay the bills. IT are a cost base. We just drain the organization of money, don't we? Yeah. Well, we should be adding some value. But those customers are the people in the business that are paying for IT. They're your business unit directors. They're the ones bringing in the money from selling products and services to external customers. And then they provide IT with those funds. Can't make money, we can't lose money. Internal operation. They'll have a view. Usually they're your CXOs, or at least your senior managers. You then have your users, your consumers, the people that are using the IT services that we as an IT function are providing, or maybe HR are providing, or maybe finance are providing in an ESM enterprise scenario. And then you have IT colleagues, us. Is everyone within IT here? I'm not making a very wide assumption. It's maybe straddle, it's okay, yeah. Yeah, obviously we've got problems as well, haven't we? We've got our own issues. Experience. So what do you think? Let's go customers first. I'll bring up some stuff on the screen in a minute. What do you think they're saying about IT within your organization right now? I won't ask for your organization's names because it's being recorded, but what do you think?
Too slow, unresponsive.
Too expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, really, well, this is brilliant because I could have put them all up and you'd have got. I'll bring them up on the screen and let's see which ones resonate with you. So have a little read. In particular resonate with you, apart from the ones you've already mentioned in the way. On the chat, business prevention department. Yep, okay, that's that's a good one. I like that. Yeah.
which I think is that one there of disappears into a black hole, isn't it? That's what that really means.
Indeed. The big one with the customers is value for money. What am I paying for? That's the ultimate. That's what they can go for. You just don't do anything. You just cost a lot of money. One's become more prevalent as well. Cyber. Should I be worried about this thing called cyber? Now you've got your CISO, usually a seat on the table around the chief exec table. You go back even maybe 8-9 years. That just wasn't the case. It was a side issue. It's now absolutely a core issue. So those are the kind of sound bites we're hearing on a regular basis when we go into have the privilege of working with our clients.
As an aside, there was a survey last year, and executives' biggest worry in insurance was cyber.
Yeah, I think I'm sort of a very either the same one or a very similar survey. It is absolutely it's huge, particularly in highly regulated industries like insurance, like financial services. Yeah, it really is. Okay, consumers. So the people are actually using the IT services that are being provided, because these people at the top, they might not be using all of them or hardly any of them, maybe some, but not all of them. But what about the consumers, the people on the coalface are actually using the things that we provide? There we go. It's come. Again, have a little read. 2 sound bites. Any ones that particularly resonate with you?
Change is taking place without warning.
Happens, isn't it? Systems on with this. I've got to log off and back on again to make this work. No one told me about that. No one gave me any warning. It just happened.
It always happens to be just before a presentation or a meeting as well.
A month end.
Patch Tuesday, Patch Tuesday, as it was again back in the north.
Yeah,
Probably put on there as well, why can't I use my own thing?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, again, that consumer grade experience that people now absolutely have. They can just use an iPhone and it's just simple, but they come into a business and suddenly there's archaic solutions that are in play. Why is it like that? We've got to think differently. And finally, you guys, you've got your own views and thoughts, and have a little read. Any resonate with you? Chat here, I've got Anthony. I've submit request to IT and it takes ages. Yep. Thank you, Anthony. Definitely resonates. Anything else in the IT colleagues? Anything I'm missing maybe?
There's always that resistance. I don't want to raise a ticket because it always disappears. But if you don't raise the ticket, I can't work on it.
Yeah. And it's horrible, isn't it? Talking about tickets.
Yeah.
It's like you're going to a cheese counter or in a supermarket. You've got to stand in a queue. It's horrible. It's not that great experience, a consumer grade experience we talked about at the start of the meeting.
it's the one I think's missing there is the repetition of why am I doing this again? Yeah, particularly in IT, we end up doing the same thing over and over.
Yeah, why can't we automate this? This is dumb.
Yeah, and if you don't, particularly, we'll come on to automation a little later on as well, but if you don't do that and you've got repetitive tasks, what do you think is going to happen? Okay. And then you've got the cost of replacing that talent, recruiting them, onboarding them, and then that one will leave a few months later as well. So these are common problems. I'm going to solve all of these today, by the way. I'm sorry to disappoint, but quite a number of them we'll be going through. And it's part of the wider course that we run, that we go through quite a lot of the points. But I just wanted to make sure, and again, we're in the right room, that we're on the same page, we're experiencing similar challenges, and to make sure they resonate. Also, we've got the chats. Many of them resonate. It's great. The crayon department, sales and marketing, engage us too late and expect us to fix it. Yeah, someone else does something right at the last minute. IT are engaged, and you try and pick up and put the pin back in and work out what to do with it. Yeah, very, very difficult. But you've got to get them to want to work with you, and that's the key part. It's a quid pro quo. You've got to have some movement on both parts, and that's about what we call organizational change management, OCM. That relationship management, to try and get them to work in the way you need them to work, so that you can provide that consumer grade experience.
And it's a classic that they've gone out to a third party provider because they can't get what they want.
Yeah.
And then when they bring that in, sorry, you can't use that because.
Exactly that. And then the fight, the battle happens. Yeah, exactly. Okay, good. Right, now on to run versus change. So run through some problem statements. Some of them are going to be related to this as well. But before we go through the operating models and the light bulb ones, this is going to be fundamental. I'll go through it reasonably quick, because otherwise we'll take up a lot of time. So if I go too quick again, please let me know.
Chris,
Yes.
I know you mentioned portals ages ago. Do you mind if we just jump back to a question that somebody had online?
Oh, yeah, I might have missed that. I've probably not scrolled up.
Sorry?
I might have missed the question. I probably didn't scroll up enough on the chat. So yes, please, if there's one I've missed, then.
Yeah, so MJG said, I was interested in seeing some practical examples of how one might bring together some of the portal aspects. How do you convince your business to invest in having a one-stop shop for services?
So the first part of that observation, yes, we're covering today. I'll actually go through an example of a portal and how that could flow. The second part of it we'll discuss in terms of how you can motivate your organization to try and bring that together. I can go through some tooling references as well. So we'll definitely cover that off.
Excellent. And then otherwise, I think people were really saying that previous exercise really resonated with them. So yeah.
Okay, so run and change. This is theory, boring theory. We're going to have to go through it. Let's try and make it a little bit more meaningful. Think of run the business and change the business as run your house and change your house. Think of running your house as just keeping it going, keeping it clean, paying the utility bills. Change the business is you're in lockdown, you're bored, and you go and convert your shed into a pub. Who did that? Anyone? Anyone buy a jacuzzi?
I was working for him.
Working home at the time, having to deal with loads of complaints that are coming to. But yeah, it's about that. Running your house is different from investing, from changing the overall structure, capacity, capability of your house. Same within IT. Okay, running the business, changing the business. And so
is it that refactoring kind of thing? You know, by running the business, all you're doing is just keeping it going and making sure things don't break. Whereas if you're changing, you may be introducing new behaviors, new cultures, new process. Almost.
This is one thing that's slightly missing, which I'll bring up on the screen now. And can you see this okay at the back? I appreciate it's white text. Is that okay? It's maintaining the service to agreed service levels. And that's key. So there's two things you need to know before you can do this effectively. What do you think those two things are?
What your SLAs are.
The service level.
So that's one of them. Even before the service levels, what's the other?
The
existing services are. What the services are. And where do you find the services?
Service catalog.
Service catalog. By the way, I'll give you a clue. Pretty much every question I ask, the answer will be service catalog. Service catalog just for rin. But it's fundamental. You've got to know what your services are. How well presented are your services at the moment to your customers? And if they are well presented, how clear are the service levels? What are the expectations that they have? Now, SLAs got connotations to it. Set of agreements sounds very formal. We're predominantly internal departments providing support to our colleagues across the business. But you still need to have some indication of what the expectations are of that service, whether that's availability, reliability, response, fulfillment, resolutions, all the different types of service levels, and can happily discuss that maybe in another session if I get invited back, if I don't bore you all today.
It feels like that we don't discuss that enough with our users. You know, it's like if you go back to kind of design thinking and jobs to be done, what are they trying to achieve? What are their pain points? And, you know, keeping things going and having uptime doesn't even occur to people because that's just a given.
Yeah, exactly. And again, consumer grade, it's lights on, keeping the lights on. If the light doesn't turn on, all hell breaks loose. If the light turns on, who gets celebrated? No one cares. The light turned on. It's also about how you talk to them in a language that they understand. You know, uptime. Do they really get that? Maybe if you start talking about lost service hours, or maybe even more lost business hours, or maybe even more, how about lost unit of currency? What's the impact on my bottom line if this service is unavailable for a couple of minutes or a couple of hours? Again, we can cover off some of that maybe at another time. But it's talking to them in a language they get it. They'll therefore want to talk to you about it rather than us going to them and going, this is what it's all about, and it's 99.99% availability. It's
It also feels sometimes that service levels are very one-sided. It's what are we getting from IT?
Yeah.
Whereas there's very little time spent on actually, to meet those, you have to give us some things.
And you touched on, I'll go in a little bit more later when I talk about the customer supply engagements. But this is a joint agreement, and we call it a charter. Very short, it's usually 1 or 2 pages. You can jazz it up in a PowerPoint slide or put it into some other tooling. It's about a joint agreement around the expectations that both IT and the business can have of each other. What does IT need from the business to be able to provide them with an effective service? And therefore, what can the business expect back from that? And that is critical to get that charter agreed upfront with clear understanding of how it's going to work at a high level. You know, don't want to go into the full detail. That really helps foster effective relationships. There's an element of trust that needs to be built into there as well.
It's like from your map at the beginning, what does good look like? If we don't know as a group what we're targeting, we will never achieve it.
Exactly. And a lot of charters that we work with clients on, at the beginning, there are sections that are in red because you know you can't deliver it. You haven't gone through a maturity journey yet or a transformation journey, so you can't achieve them all. But what you can say to the business is, that's where we're going. And we'll get there in 3 months or 6 months or 12 months time. We will get there. We've jointly agreed that we're going to do that. But we can do all the 80% other bits right now for them.
And that's where I've seen that in client materials before, where they've said, this is to be determined as part of the project. You're going, no, it needs to be determined at the initiation of the project.
Yeah, never will, because it'll slip down the priorities.
Yeah, I think it might have been when I was talking to you before, we go, you know, I've seen where it's been the deliverable is due in a workshop the following day, and 11 p.m. the night before, we're still agreeing what is the actual deliverable.
Yeah. Exactly. So that charter is a really good way of doing that and bringing it to life. To finish off the run and change model. So if that's in the run space, what's change? So change, one-off finite changes to business processes, forget about IT, but most changes to business processes involve some need for IT change that are not covered by run resources. So the easiest way to determine what's change is anything that is not run. By doing that, you need to define what run is, and therefore you need to confirm your
Service catalog.
Thank you very much. Service catalog. You haven't got a chance of being able to create this clear delineation between the two if you don't have your service catalog and service levels defined. And that's when you start to get into a bum fight of people saying, I want this thing done. IT turn around and say, well, that's not part of my resource. I need some more resources for that. And well, why? Where's your service catalog? What did you already commit to? Or someone said a year ago when this project was implemented, you could do that straight afterwards. Well, that was a year ago. No one wrote it down, and nothing's been done since. Okay, so that is a clear delineation between the two. Change is anything that's not run. It's the easiest way to define it. Okay. So breaking that down, there's some typical categories of run. I'm going to break that down a bit further. I'm actually going to show you what good looks like when it comes to percentages of effort. We've done some time and motion studies with organizations and done some research, so I can break that down for you. So resolving incidents, fulfilling requests, operation improvements, that type of activity. Whereas in the change space, there's usually 2 different buckets. You've got projects and small enhancements, or small changes, some people call it. It's exactly the same thing. You just go through faster if it's small change. You usually have some boundaries. It's less than, I don't know, 20 days worth of effort, less than 10 grand's worth of spend. And you therefore have one small enhancement manager that manages 20 of those rather than a product manager that can manage 3 or 4. The resource needs in run should remain consistent because you know what your services are, you know what your service levels are. You should be able to say, right, okay, I can keep the lights on, I can keep this going, I can deliver the service to our users in the way they expect, using the same resources. However, if a project comes in, that project could add or remove the need for resources. So if a project was to deliver automation in a service test, for example, then potentially less service test agents are required. The project would then bake in that's a benefit it's delivering. Maybe brand new services being introduced and it's not removing anything else, in which case you need more people, whether that's level 1, 2, or 3 resources, in which case it's adding cost in. Projects should pick up the first year's run costs, then your run budgets can bake it in for subsequent years of cycle afterwards.
How often would you review this? Because it feels like, okay, you know what you need to run the business at a certain point in time. Then you go through a massive growth spurt, take on loads of new users, deploy lots of more kits.
Yeah.
When does that kick in to go, well, actually, our headcount now, even looking at the improvements and change the business, we're still way down.
Can I come back to that when we get to demand and financial planning? Because that's exactly hopefully the answer that. Okay, but really good question.
So we have, sorry.
Go for it, Kylie.
Yeah, so we have someone on the chat who says, what role can DevOps or even NoOps play here?
It's a really good one, the DevOps infinity cycle here. So they work in conjunction with each other. So DevOps is an integral part to this. It's about recognizing at what point you're doing development to support change versus the point you're doing operations to support run. So DevOps is a fundamental part. It's more of a framework method to execute effective operations after development, but it does complement what we're going through as well here. That make sense? I don't know who, it was a Jog that raised that.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, okay. And then OLAs, I will come on to a bit about OLAs a little bit later on as well. So yeah, change in terms of resource needs can fluctuate. Most organisations have a core capability, a core internal resource that, as we know, every year there's going to be some form of change activity. Project managers, business analysts, system analysts, maybe. But you may have burst capacity. You may bring in contractors or third parties that can support an increased number of projects that may have been signed off that particular quarter, year, whatever period it may be. I mentioned that could then change your run resource. On the delivery method, you should have run books or SOPs, standard operating procedures. Shouldn't be a surprise. You know what your services are because you put them in the service catalogue. You know what your service levels are. You should know how to operate your services. All defined. People should know they should have work instructions, SOPs, to just execute what we call click work, which is just keep on going. Whereas you change the business activity will be what we call a project management framework, and that supports both agile and kind of waterfall Prince 2 type principles. Again, another course we can go through Wagile if we do that. Waterfall agile type approaches.
And in case of the change, there will be always a change in your catalog.
Yes, so if a change is made, so a change in the context of change the business and therefore a project, that would invariably lead to some change to your service catalog. It may well be an update to an existing service, or it could be a brand new service that's being introduced. So come back to your question earlier around the planning demand. So for run, part of your annual planning, you should be going out and asking questions. Let's take end user services, quite tangible, it's devices. What triggers, what lights up the need for more devices? The biggest trigger do you think there is out there? More people. More people, exactly that. Your business is growing, your example earlier. You've got more people, you were 100 people, now go up to 200 people. They're going to need devices. But that should be coming through as part of your annual planning. Pretty much every organisation does financial planning. Your financial year might be quite different to each other's, but it's an annual planning with a multi-year view. You go out and ask the question, the product owner or the service owner in this scenario will go out and ask the question, okay, I know what lights up my service, what drives the need for more of it. Let's go out and capture the information I need to be able to put a robust forecast in play. Well, that forecast is now there. You present that to your CFO. Your CFO then said, no way you're having that. So, well, I've gone out and done my demand. I know my service. I've got it defined my service count. I know the service levels. If we don't have the budget for whatever reason, what options do we have here? We either don't grow the business in the way that we think we do in terms of number of people, or maybe we adjust our service levels. And you give the levers, cost versus performance, your levers to pull. That's your planning for run. For project space, for change, it should be a wish list. You bring that wish list of ideas, the brilliant things that people come up with of how to change the way we work, a new service that might need to be introduced or a change to an existing one. You do some shaping. Shirt size is small, medium, large in terms of its cost and maybe benefit. And that wish list will go through what we call project portfolio management to come out with a view of the strategic projects that we then want to go and execute. There will be a budget associated to that during that financial year. Doesn't mean to say you'll execute all of them. Doesn't mean to say your estimations at the beginning were perfect. They're probably not. We're all very bad at estimates. But what it does do, it sets a budget of a portfolio of execution. And maybe something midway through the year comes in that is high priority. That's fine. Just means that something else has got to drop off the list. Can't do more because your budget has already been set unless somehow you can get some more budget during your financial year. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute.
Shouldn't something be, well, not left, but saved to any, let's say, any changes that should be done anyway? Do you understand what I mean? Because sometimes there are failures when you introduce your IT or AI, and you need something urgently and not.
And if that something is predetermined, it should be going on the run, executed as part of your run books. If it's not predetermined, if it's so wide and vague, but it's urgent, it should go through here. You may leave spare capacity to be able to do that, but it's executed in that change space. It's got to be one or the other. Predetermined, it's in that space. If not, it's in this space. And something else we need to drop off the list to make way for that urgent priority activity that's come through.
Who's going to be in control of the benefits that these changes are going to realise when they don't realise them, and then you're left with a reduced headcount in your run because those benefits haven't come through?
It's a really good question. It's probably an area of discussion that would take probably an hour in its own right. So maybe afterwards, if you'd like to talk to, I can go through that in a little bit more detail. But just conscious, maybe getting a bit too far away from the original scope. But yeah, happy to go through this. Okay, so those are your base concepts. So run the business, change the business. I mentioned run your house, change your house. Run your house is your utility bills. You're keeping the lights on. You've got things that go wrong. I had a cistern leak the other day. I had to bring out a plumber and go and get it fixed. Yeah, you may have the budget, you may not. You find it from somewhere, you get it done, because otherwise your kids can't do what they need to do. That's just bad news. Whereas change the business is I built an extension. Yeah, but I built that extension. That cost me an amount of money. What do you think happened to the run? Why is that?
You've increased the area that you're heating, that you're lighting.
Exactly. Yeah. So I need to bake that in when I'm doing my business case for my extension. I need to bake that in, or what's happened to my run costs? What do I need to do? I had solar panels installed last year. What do you think happened to my run costs?
Hopefully went down.
Depending on
Not
your
during this
payback and
winter anyway.
your investment up front to install.
But that's part of the business case. Again, change, install. Yeah, it's new capability. Solar panels on my roof. My run costs have gone down. Part of that. So it's exactly the same business. Think about your business as running your house, whether you own or rent. Very similar principles, anyway. Make sense? Yeah. Okay. Whole time. So, prior to any optimization work, based on what we just went through, what percentage of effort within the IT organization is spent on run activity, keeping the lights on, providing services to the agreed service levels? I do hands up, go around, let people digest it for a second. When I do this virtually as well, I put a poll up on the screen, but this is on Zoom, so I might struggle. So maybe in the chat channel, guys, if you could put your own votes at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you very much. You've restarted that. So in the room here, who thinks it's 1? 2? 3? There we go again. Then. 4? 5? 6?
So we have somebody on the chat who's a 5 and a couple of people who are 6s.
Okay, because I think we had a bit of a split in the room here of mostly 3s and mostly 5s. I think that was that's where we got to as well. So hold that thought. Hold that thought. I won't provide the answer just yet. What I'm going to go through now is what we see at the start of transformation, doing a time and motion study, and then what happens at the end. What does good look like? Again, it's about aligning on that vision. And why? Why is this important? So, for those that went for, I think it was 5. Well done. A bit harsh because 70% was on the borderline between 4 and 5, I think, or 5 and 6, can't remember now. But we typically see 70%. 70% of all of your run effort, all of your effort is spent on run.
Is that actual or claimed?
Actual. This is time and motion study. It is mixed in. We do get some surveys that we do as well. We're actually going to run another insight survey in a few months' time, but this is what we see. So we do time recording. Go in. A lot of people may think that's Big Brother, but it is revolutionary. Fundamentally change people's behaviours.
Can I just ask, is this effort by head count or by cost, or how are you judging?
This is percentage of overall, whether that's purely permanent resource or contractor resource or even third-party resource of an entire IT operation.
Resource time.
Resource.
Yes. Okay, fine, thanks.
Okay. So that leaves 30% to focus on responding to market conditions. 30% of time to add that real value to support your strategic direction as a business. 30%, not much. If you think about all these ideas, these wonderful things that people have to support the business strategy, to sell more products and services, those ideas come into a funnel. Some will then be chucked out straight away as ludicrous ideas. Some will be, okay, create a business case, come back and give it some more thought, cost versus benefit. That business case will come back and a few more will be chucked out. Doesn't wash his face. Costs outweigh the benefits, we won't get the return on investment. Eventually, you'll get a few that get approved through that funnel. If you've only got 30% of a number, whatever that number may be, an IT department of 10 people, IT department of 10,000 people, still the same, it's still 30%. The challenge you have, the business always want to pour a gallon of demand into your cup. What happens when you do that?
Makes a mess.
A very wet floor. Like I did with my toilet brush. It's not good. And that gallon, if your capacity as an IT organization is a cup, it can only go up to the rim. It can't go any further. You might want to flog it every now and again and give it a kick. You pour it in, it's still only going to go to that line. And if you've given it a kick, it's probably condensed, and therefore you've probably got even less capacity to work on and volumetrics. Well, what could you do to potentially get that cup up to a pint? Because you're never going to change the gallon. You might be able to have some more practical conversations with them to set expectations that, guys, yes, great, you're having these ideas in this wish list, but bearing in mind you're not going to get them all done. Let's have a practical conversation of jointly putting together a prioritized list of projects that you want to invest in. That's good. But what could you do to potentially increase your capacity?
Get 2 cups.
2 cups, like that. How can you get 2 cups? Excuse me.
Decrease your run effort.
It's definitely one of them. We call that optimization. Okay, switch.
Resource.
And that's the other one. You increase capacity. Okay, you just buy it in. That costs money. The alternative option to my left is around optimization. And therefore, you switch the default. And what we typically see after an optimization transformation effort almost inverts, doesn't fully, but it almost inverts. Yes, you spend some money on transformation, but at the end of it, you've then got double the amount of resource that you can spend on genuine strategic business investment activity. Okay. And then the other options you mentioned is the capacity. You could grow the size of the pie, bringing additional contractors or maybe grow your permanent resource. Make sense? So it's easier said than done. But I'm just going to give a little bit more context. How am I doing for time, by the way? I've lost my clock. I think I'm okay, but if you can be honest. So what does good look like? I'll just run through this quickly. This is in the run space after transformation effort. Again, doesn't matter if you've got 10 people in your IT organization or thousands. Typically 15% is made up by overheads. Even if you're doing change, most organizations put all the overheads in run. So things like time off, training, recruitment, about 15%, depends how generous your holiday policies are. Then you go into the categories I mentioned earlier, fulfilling search requests, resolving incidents, etc. That's what we typically see from a what good looks like perspective. Which ones stand out to you that would probably look very different before transformation effort?
Billing service requests.
What do you think that will be more or less? or transformation?
Less.
Okay.
People won't bother because you're spending a lot of time on operational maintenance and management.
Okay.
I was thinking you could just automate a lot of that stuff.
You could. It's slightly different with resolve requests because your overall number of resources will be higher rather than it being a percentage change. You, by doing automation, you can, or you can reallocate that resource to doing other value added activities. But the same school of thought, if I may, resolving incidents. Resolving incidents 15%. What do you think it would look like prior to doing any transformation effort?
Presumably it's going to be higher because you're going to have more incidents because you haven't fixed some of the things that are causing.
Exactly. It's usually about 50%. 50% of your run effort is spent on resolving incidents. You've not done operational maintenance. You've not looked at the lifespan of a disk within a server. You've not looked at the lifespan of a device. You're sweating the asset beyond belief. And therefore you're going to have more incidents that are going to come in. You've not addressed your root cause. What do you think addressing root cause is typically before you do transformation?
Not much. Yeah, but it's more than that.
Exactly, usually less than 1%. You haven't seen some organisations, not at all. Major incidents are fine, we'll move on to the next one.
Root cause would be an example, would be what that would be good to fix.
So root cause is kept Trago type approach of problem management, where you try and delve into the why. 5 questions, it's like your kid nagging you, why? Get to your 5th one, you typically get to the root cause. You address that root cause, it either eradicates that from happening again, or it significantly reduces the probability and or impact should that major incident happen again.
Is there a common root cause in service management that tends to be typical that isn't resolved or takes a long time?
Really good question. I'm not, because every organisation is different, they've all got different IT systems. I think it's quite difficult to draw together a commonality of type of issue. Some will be SaaS-based solutions, some will be on-prem solutions as well. So I think it varies per client. I've not in my experience, I've not seen that common. But yeah, really good question. Okay. So yeah, some thoughts there around pre-transformation versus post-transformation. There's one more category to go. Pre-change consultancy. It's got the word change in it, but we're talking about run. An idea has got to start somewhere. In IT, as value, co-creation value partners, we've got to nurture that idea. We've got to grow that idea before it's become a project. Remember that funnel on the slide at the top? You don't want your business going in and creating loads of these ideas without engaging with IT. If you turn around and say, no, it's not us, we can't do that until it's a formal project, give me a charge code or expense codes, otherwise I'm not going to work on it. They're just going to go off and do their own thing. And then at the last minute come to you and throw something over the fence. You've got to be able to invest some of your run effort in supporting the business, fertilizing and nurturing those ideas. Typically, you need your business relationship manager or your business partners, supported by a BA community. It's really important you set time aside from your run activity to support nurturing change. When it becomes a full project, it goes into your change.
I've seen that as a mistake lots of organisations make. Where you were talking there of instead of nurturing and being an advisory to the business, it's always, have you submitted a ticket? Have you submitted a ticket? So that you are then back to what we were saying at the beginning, you're a business blocker rather than a business enabler.
Indeed. Again, we'll come on to a little bit of that in a minute as well. Really good point that Jog's raised, and a common recurring root cause coming to the question from the lady back here is uncontrolled change. Can we do it a section on problem management? I'm happy to come again if I get the privilege of coming back, happy to go through that. There are 3 different elements to root cause. You've got the what. The what in service management language is the CI, configuration item. You've got the why or the reason, and you've got the who. Those are your 3 elements. And Jog's mentioned the middle one there, which is the what. What was the reason for it? And yes, uncontrolled change, or indeed controlled change, typically makes up 80% of all incidents that occur. And that's based on, again, analysis that we've done over the years. So if they're, sorry, at the back, if your question was more about commonality of the reason, yes, absolutely. And we've got lots of data on that. If it's about the what, as in the CI, no, we don't have any data on that. We've even got data on the who, do you think is the most, in terms of your IT areas, your departments, do you think the most common areas that will cause major incidents?
CEO.
Is this being recorded?
I stand by it.
Probably from the change the business, some of the projects delivering.
Exactly. And which area is the most common area for delivering change? We're being a bit harsh. I've not gone through your common service provider community yet, which I'll come through in a minute. But it's your apps team.
Is your
Apps team, your application team, application development team. You've got lots of different areas, but because your application team are typically the ones that are responding to market conditions the most and delivering change the most, because change is the most common cause.
Sorry, so on the chat, we've got a common recurring root cause is uncontrolled change.
Yes. So yeah, that was the comment I was responding to in terms of the 3 elements of root cause.
Oh, you've already done it. Yeah.
What's, why, and the who. That one is the why. We've got a list of your best practice root cause codes, a list of 24, so that you can generate this type of data. You can get the commonality that comes through. Again, something I'm happy to talk about at another time. Okay. Final section on here, just to complete the picture, is third-party costs. You've got your categories here. Every organisation is different in terms of the spend. They may be insourced, outsourced, multi-sourced, but so yeah, you can't put a figure on them. That varies. Again, this is all context setting, so I'm hoping this is helpful. I'm leading up to the wider conversation around supplier customer engagements and the operating model. Any further comments or observations on this? No. Okay, right. So let's get into it, onto the operating model. One piece first. What I'm going to go through is a subset of 5 strategic themes which should exist within every organisation. I say the word should because I know it doesn't. There are lots of organisations where we've gone through this and there's a little bit of a shyness in the background on whether we don't have this in place. That's okay. It's about how you then take it forwards. So first things first, what you need is a business strategy. Yeah, define strategic intent. What are they trying to achieve? Where are they trying to go? That should then have business capabilities or a business process architecture mapped to that. You should have a decent idea of what business processes the business are operating to be able to execute that strategy. Again, should. Usually your enterprise architecture function would be involved in that if you have one. So that's in your business space. Then you go into your CIO, your IT director, and say, okay, what IT services can you provide us to enable the business to achieve that goal, that strategy? And that's different types of IT services. It could be end user services, end user computing, it could be application space, whatever it may be. But what can IT provide? Underneath the IT strategy, you've got process and all capability. So what people do we need and how many people and what skill sets do they have? And what processes we can operate to enable us to provide those IT services to the business. Underneath that, you've got 3 more. You've got tooling strategy. What tools are IT going to use to be able to execute their process in an effective manner, whether that's ServiceNow, Cherwell, Avanti, many others are available, and other related tools, SolarWinds, etc. Which vendors am I going to strategically partner with, if any, at all? Most organizations now do have at least one, if not multiple, strategic partners in certain areas. And maybe less so in the current climate, but location strategy used to be big. Where am I going to locate? Where's the talent pool? It's going to be London-based, so it could draw on a bigger talent pool. With the pandemic and the growth of remote working, that's become less prevalent. But those are your 5. Every IT function should have these 5 strategic things covered one way or another. What I'm going to focus on now is number 2. Okay, and I'll do it at a reasonable level. Again, I'm happy to talk in the break in more detail. Any questions before I go into number 2? How many have got this in place that you're aware of? Hands up. Okay, again, it's common. Not necessarily terrible, it's not, that's okay. But it's an opportunity to move forward. Right, so customer supplier engagements. the real crux of why we're here today. So first things first, terminology, customer, often used term. There's actually two variants of it. You've got consumer and customer. Customer, we talked about earlier, is the person who pays the bills. Consumer that uses the service. Think about it as a parent and child analogy. What children here? Good. Down the supermarket, a dreaded turn down the confectionery aisle. Yeah. What happens? Your kids at your feet going, I want this chocolate bar, whatever it may be. Now, as the child, they're the ones that can consume what you're going to feed them. As the parent, I'm there to make a decision on behalf of my child. Is that good for you? Is it a good food choice? And secondly, can we afford it? Is it within my budget? The same scenario in the business. Those senior managers, those CXOs, will be making decisions around the food that these guys have got to eat. Can they afford it? Is it the right stuff? Don't let them hear me say that, though, please. Okay, parent-child is a bit of a sensitive subject, but principally that's how it works. And then on the right-hand side, you've got the supplier. And this framework, I'm going to do it generic for now, and then the next slide I'm going to focus in on as an IT example, and it does work in HR and finance as well, coming back to one of the earlier comments. This any walk of life, it could be, who's your home broadband provider?
Vodafone.
Vodafone. It could be you on the left-hand side of the customer and Vodafone on the right-hand side. There are 4 reasons for why a customer and supplier would engage with each other. What do you think? Are they in the chat channel or here in the room? They are. And even more bonus points if you can get them in the order my animation works. It really happens. What do you think? I'll give you the first one for free, actually.
Price.
So the first one is about the relationship. Now with Vodafone, you might not think it's a relationship, maybe quite transactional. Maybe you are very fond of them and you go to Vodafone on a regular basis. But if you can think about an IT example, this is about, right, I've got a relationship, I want to manage that one, whether that's a conversation once a year to do a contract renewal or something that's a little bit closer, whether that's looking at demand, how much am I using my Vodafone broadband? Am I really getting value from it? It's about that demand, that financial, the cost element to it, and that relationship element to it. In the IT world, we do that via a business relationship manager, sometimes called a business partner. That will make sense? 3 more to go. What do you think?
Purpose or functionality,
Sorry?
the purpose or functionality you're wanting from the product.
So someone wanting something.
Yeah, but the fit for purpose. What
Service.
you're getting,
A service. Okay. So I think I know where you're going with that. Maybe I'm paraphrasing a little
service
bit.
or a product that helps you achieve your business objective.
Gotcha. Okay. So the customer in that example, or you, Vodafone, can provide me with something I want. Now we split that into 2 here. First one is a work request. Second one is a service request. Now what's the difference between the 2? A service request is something that is on your catalogue. A work request is for something that's not. What do you think you need to have to be able to understand whether it goes into a service request or a work request?
Service catalog.
Thank you very much. There we go. But it is key, it is critical, and that's how it should be. Talking about avoiding the need for your users to navigate the organizations, make it clear. Your service catalog, particularly your requestable catalog, and I'll come on to different types later on, is gold. You get that right, you've completely simplified the conversation with your user community. You radically change that experience, let alone the fulfillment activity, which you can also transform through automation. Again, I'll come on to that a little bit later on. Get your service catalog right, get more stuff in this space, it gets filled using run resource. You've got less that then needs to go down this route. Every work request needs to be reviewed, it needs to be prioritized, it needs to have investment put against it, maybe even a business case of some description. It takes longer. It's not a bad thing, it's the right thing to do. But you don't want to have little routine things going through there. You want that to be going through in the service request space. Okay. Some frameworks, some tools, they call them demands or ideas. That's all very good language, but they're requests. They're requests for work, whereas this is a request for a service. That makes sense?
Would you start looking at, trends within that work request?
Yes.
So you can shift them into service.
Spot on. Exactly that. Exactly that. Yeah, but that's an
Well,
That's an investment conversation because you then have to build that requestable service to take it out of your work request, and you then need to run these or something. A case in point, I'm cheating a little bit here on services because we're going to cover a quiz later on. You should all know the answer to this. Rolling refresh your devices, your laptop, desktops. Who does that in this show of hands or in the chat? Who does that based on run budget at the moment? It's every 3 months you got another set of devices you know need to refresh. Versus who does it as a project once every 4 or 5 years when someone starts screaming so loudly, everything then gets refreshed in one go. Hands up for the first one. Rolling refresh. One, hands up for the second one. There's one big chunk of, okay. And that's what we typically see. Most people at the moment do it as a wait until someone screams and shouts the loudest, and then a whole chunk of stuff gets redone. And that's a work request as a project. You then got to execute it through investment activity. Whereas if you did it rolling refresh, your business don't even need to request it. Right, you're coming up, it's 4 years old. We're going to approach you and using our run budget, maybe CapEx budget, because it's still a device which you can then depreciate over a number of years. I'm then going to proactively change that because I know if you sweat that asset any longer, you're going to drive a load of incidents into my the operation, which is just going to hit productivity. So coming to your very good observation, that's how one way of switching stuff out of work requests and even bypassing search requests. Okay. Final one, number 4. Something that never happened within IT. What do you think it is? It's gone wrong. Exactly that. What do we call that in IT? In ITIL language, we use ITIL as a framework. Something's broken, something's gone wrong. Okay, so those are your 4. It's not call Susie around the corner because I know she gets my stuff fixed for me. Yeah, or Frank because I know he'll come along and deliver my change that I need. That's it. 4. How many different touch points are there on this diagram?
2.
2. And what are those 2?
Service desk and relationship manager.
Exactly. So your BRM deals with your relationship, deals with your demand, deals with your finances. It deals with your shaping of your work requests, what we talked about earlier, that nurturing of ideas. It doesn't deliver them, it just does the shaping. Leaving your service request in your instance, it is just your service that it should be your service portal. Modern world is your virtual agent that should be picked up. That's how simple it should be. If you've got 100 people in IT, it shouldn't be 100 people that anyone in the business can contact. It should effectively be, apart from a few reserved people, it should be 1. It's your service desk, your service portal. And all they need to know. And it's further to cover finance, HR, facilities, any other shared functions you want as well. Whenever someone wants something, you just say, here we go, here's your service portal.
But I think you've got to make sure that you don't scale with kind of complicating things. So just by starting to put, HR or finance on here, if they don't fit into those, you then turn your users off again and you break your model. So you've got to scale it rather than just add more stuff in.
Exactly that. And we've done this with universities and others as well. We got lots of different libraries and missions. It's still a service. It's a support function. They're providing services to other areas of the organization. And you can do that as under an integrated service management practice, enterprise service management practice. They do fit in. Not everyone has things that can break. Predominantly that's facilities and IT. Trap 2 down the corner is broken. Someone comes out and needs to fix it. Talking about toilets. Whereas in HR, people don't break, do they? Well, you have lots of, some people, yeah, they do. But you have requests. So that would fall into here. And the same principle applies. Okay.
So Jog on the chat has commented that a catalogue item is priced, but a work request needs to be quoted for.
Yeah, exactly that. It's a question out to most organizations. Do they want to put the price onto your catalogue item? You need to know it, absolutely, and we'll come to that later. But do you want to advertise it? Some people do because it then drives behaviours. Some people don't because they don't do the costing and charging that goes with it. That's a choice. That's a discussion. But the observation from Jog is spot on. Okay. Excuse me, got a bit of a cough. I'm going to extrapolate now. I'm going to move away from your Vodafone example, your home broadband.
So am I.
Yes, sorry. The twitching that was happening when I was talking about it. And now I'm going to put it into an IT example. And this comes back to one of the observations earlier around integrating services or component services from vendors. But the same principles hold. You've got your business units now. Think about your business units, which organization you work in. You've got your customers and consumers, your same 4 different reasons for engagement, the same 2 touch points. Now you integrate some organization called SIAM, Service Integration Management, again, a methodology that launched about 15 years ago. But this time now it brings in the components that are provided by the IT service providers. And these are your typical 4 areas. You've got your commercial apps, applications that are provided to your external customers. Your corporate apps, your apps that are provided internally to your organization, so your HR apps, your finance apps, etc. Your end user services, so your devices and and then you've got your hosting, storage, and network. They all combine to provide services that the integrator sends out to the business unit. Behind the scenes, these service providers may have one or loads of third parties. That's up to them. These guys make the decision. You've probably got directors in charge of these different areas. They big money, they've got to make the call. Do they do it in-house or do they bring in external third parties? So let's take an example. Service request. Request gets raised by the business unit. It's on your catalog. It goes in via service portal. It's predetermined, it's pre-routed. It then goes through to an appropriate assignment group. That assignment group picks that up. They're in, let's say they're in end user services. They fulfill the request based on a predefined work instruction. So take that step further, bring in automation. Someone raises it, it gets done straight away. I want Visio installed onto my device. Raise it via the service portal, links into Intune or SCCM, the user device within a couple of seconds, tickets closed. Zero touch request. Okay. Whereas your work request, as you were talking about earlier on the chat, it needs to go through your BRM, it needs to go through that filtering, that nurturing, that business case development. When that project, if that project gets signed off, it then goes into your service provider community to start to build or amend that service. They may need to bring in third parties, which will be a statement of work, a contractual agreement that will need to be put in place, and then you can deliver that service that's been requested. Takes longer, costs more money, but for good reason. Key thing here, do not jump the supply chain. Okay. Here's the scenario. You've gone to, what do we look like in here? Waitrose. You look like Waitrose people. You've gone to Waitrose, you bought a pack of sausages. Sorry for anyone that's vegetarian, and you take them home to your family. They don't like them. You're ill. What do you go and do? Who do you go and complain to?
Waitrose.
Exactly. What happens in the IT example? If Waitrose are here, because they're the people you bought it from, you're the customer at the end here. What do you think happens? They go to the butcher, maybe even go further. They go to the farmer. Reared the pigs in the first place. It's crazy. You just wouldn't. But it happens all the time. The business think, right, okay, I need to speak to them directly to sort it out. Now, drive the accountability, drive the behaviours. These guys are contracted with this area. It's their choice. They've got to manage that relationship. Now, what may happen in that example, maybe Waitrose will bring the butcher into the conversation as part of a joint apology letter. That's fine. Bring them to the conversation. It's the engagement from left to right that needs to follow this routing. Coming back the other way, absolutely, it's open for discussion. Okay, but do not jump the supply chain. Any questions? Any thoughts or observations on this?
I know how you're going to answer my question now. It's really good.
Okay. Right. So, this is not to preclude the other magic that happens behind the scenes here. Okay, so what I've covered here is business relationship management, idea demand, service request incident. There are many more practices. There are another 28 practices that sit behind the ITIL banner. They all happen in, when you think about availability management, event monitoring, alerting, all that activity still happens here, but the business do not need to see that. What they need to see is this stuff, and you need to get that working well. That's when you can provide a consumer grade service. That's when it can become more about a hospitality service rather than a transaction service. Okay. Right, how am I doing for time?
We're about 5 to 10 minutes.
5 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
Oh my word. Okay, you're still here. Either you're very polite and don't want to get up and leave, or it's kind of hopefully hitting the spot. So we'll see how we get on. So what I'll do with this, probably got a good 20 minutes left. So I'll try and balance it. I'll speed it up. So I'm now going to go into what is a service. This is the definition from the ITIL handbook. I'll read. Yeah. I don't know about you, but every time I read that, I've got to read it times to try and really understand it and get behind it. It kind of makes sense. It means delivering value to customers by facilitating outcomes to customers. Yeah. Okay, it makes sense. What we recommend is stripping that back. What consumers physically see, use, and/or request. That's what a service is. And that could be IT providing a service, it could be HR, it could be finance, whoever. That definition is key. Now, what I usually do, but without time constraints for today, is then go through a little quiz. I'm going to do 2 or 3 with you, rather than the whole set that's on the screen now. And please participate for those who are on the chat as well. So for the first one, it's going to turn either red or green. Red, it's not a service, or green, it is a service. The first one is buy or procure a laptop. So in an IT example, hands up in the room if you think that is a service. Keep your hands down if you don't think it's a service. Just over half the people in the room. The other half that have their hands down, either they're very tired, or they don't think it's a service. I'll go with that. We've got yeses on the chats here. Okay, thank you guys. It's not. So for those that had their hands down, so maybe if I can go to the gentleman at the front here, you had your hand down for this, so you said it wasn't a service. What was your thinking behind why it wasn't a service? Apologies for putting you on the spot. I'm happy to.
I'm sorry, I wasn't concentrating.
That's okay. No worries. I'm
tired.
No worries.
I've travelled a long way.
I'll go.
Sorry for being late.
No worries. So buy, procure laptop. Quite a few people, I think over half said yes. Should the business be coming to IT and say, I need to buy and procure a laptop? What do you think they should be doing instead?
There's a lot, yeah. So there's a lot more to actually getting people up and working than just buying or procuring a laptop. So actually the service itself is that end-to-end process that says everything that actually is required to get somebody sitting down and working on their new laptop. That's the service.
Agreed. That's a core element to it. Who owns the laptop?
It completely depends how you're structured.
Business.
It does. When someone leaves an organization, where does the laptop go?
In a cupboard.
It does. And it's, these are highlighting some of the challenges. This is what this does. Going through all of these, this is an hour debate on its own, going through all this stuff. It's really, and it lifts the lid on some of the challenges, common challenge, all the stuff you just mentioned there. It shouldn't be a service. They shouldn't be requesting to buy or procure a laptop. They should be requesting a laptop, which is the second one on here. Provide me, please, with a new laptop, which was Carly was saying, you'll get everything you need to be able to do your job in an effective way. When that person leaves the organization, it gets returned to IT. It's pre-loved kit, it gets repurposed. If it's within the valuable usage time frame of that device, it may be then sent out to the next person that comes in. Maybe they've got stock and you don't need to buy or procure a laptop at all because you can fulfill that request from stock. The buying and procuring is asset management. That's a behind the scenes. That diagram went on a minute ago. That's the right hand side. That's the magic that happens behind the scenes. What the end user is looking for is provide me with a damn laptop, please. And again, there's a discussion I can have around how you can do that in an effective way. I won't do return laptop. That's another discussion. Here's another one. Provide governance and strategy. So let's do it the other way around. Hands up in the room if you do not think this is a service. Keep your hands down if you do think it's a service. Again, on the chat channel. If you don't think it's a service, put your hand up. We've got one in the room here, two.
So on the chat, we've got somebody saying it is a service to the department buying it.
I think that might be related to the
Yeah,
previous.
to the previous one. Good point.
No worries, but thank you for keeping an eye on it, Carla. Thank you.
You can't buy that. It has to be inside. Well, yes, you
Not
can.
necessarily about buying, this is about someone requesting it. We've
You might-
seen this,
You might have requested, but you might be subject to governance.
perfect. And we've seen this listed, we've gone into a client organisation, a couple of them actually, and they've had this as the #1 service listed on their catalogue. How? Come back to the definition. You can't see it, you can't use it, you can't request it. How? It's the magic again. On the right-hand side, it's behind the scenes activity. You need to have strategy and governance in place. If you don't, you're going to fall apart. But it's not something that your users will interact with. Strategy and governance governs all your services that are in play. The next one, provides support. I won't ask the question because it debates a long time over otherwise, but that's not a service either. The service you're providing, it's going on the laptop example, is the laptop. That laptop is there. If it breaks, you need support for the laptop. Just a generic service called provide support is not a service. Your laptop is the service, or your application is the service, or your website is the service, or your report that you're receiving is the service. The fact that you get support that goes along with it, that's part of the overall service. It's not a service in its own right. I'll bring them all up on the screen now because otherwise we're going to be here for a long time and eat into your eating time. A couple have gone amber because they're up for discussion and debate. But are there any on here that jump out of you? Any that you go, oh, I don't necessarily agree with that, or I don't understand why it is or isn't a service? Anyone spot any themes? Different types of services that are servicing.
I suppose you'd like to think that password reset would be something that could be done by the end user rather than by your own resource.
Yeah, drive self-service capability. It's the modern world. Single sign-on capability of doing resets. Absolutely. The password reset one is always a hot topic. Nothing's broken. An incident is where an unplanned activity has happened. It's not unplanned, it's built-in capability. The only thing that's broken is the memory in that user's head. Yeah. But from a user perspective, it doesn't matter. They phone up and go, I can't get into this system. Well, that's an incident to them. You log it as an incident such. If they say, I forgot my password, can you reset it? That's a service request. They're asking you to provide a service, which is password reset. But you're spot on. It should be something with self-service capability. So I'm now going to go through.
Surely self-service is still a service. You're providing it at some.
Yes.
point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly that. It's a registered service. You just do it yourself. Yeah.
I was thinking more of the context and what you said earlier. Should somebody be coming to IT to do that, or is it not something they could do themselves?
If they can do it, the service you're providing them is then the password reset service. It's the automated service. That is a service. That's an application, and that needs to be available. It needs to be. It could break, in which case you need to fix it and repair it. But you've provided them with that password reset service. If you don't have that service available, then there's a service request. So you've touched on two things there. An application is a service. The ability to raise a password reset request is a service, but they're two very different things, aren't they? Two very different things. So I'm now going to go through architecture around the service catalog. There are 7 different types. And this is critical to understanding how you structure your service catalog for your business. The first one is a base layer. This is about every team within your IT organization will be providing a service of some description. And we call that a reference catalog to avoid confusion with service catalog. They provide components and bits that roll up to potentially combine to create a set of services to your users. And the first one on the list here is your requestable services, which you're touching on there. It's the one that most people go to straight away, things you can request on a portal somewhere. And if there's time a bit later on, I can go through that. The service levels around this are about response and fulfillment timeframe. It's a bit your Amazon shopping experience. You should be able to go in, get a view if you're Prime, you can get it within 24 hours. You should have an SLA against that. You should have the predefined fulfillment workflow. And if there's time in a minute, I'll go through that in more detail. That makes sense though, in terms of the first one. The next 5 can all break. You can all raise incidents against them. You can't raise an incident against a request for service. Yeah. But the next 5 I'm about to go through can all break. First 2 fundamentally underpin business processes. The first one typically takes up more than half of your IT cost base, and business application services. Then we use ServiceNow here. Yeah, so they've got something called CSDM, Common Service Data Model, links in with that as well. They call them application services, which put business in front of them. But we're agnostic. We work with every tool, every vendor. What they are, things that people see and interact with. They could be your company website, it could be your HR system, it could be your commercial app. They sit on infrastructure. That could be a SaaS-based solution. It could be on-prem. And that service level is all around the availability of that service. You need to talk to it in the language that we talked about right at the beginning that the user will understand. They don't understand percentages, they care. They care about it being workable for them. So business applications is your first one and major one. Your next one, what we call location connectivity services. This is the way in which you connect to access your applications. Back in the 90s, early noughties, you get a situation where people will be reporting the application they're using as unavailable because their network's down in their office. That's not part of the service boundary. If the network went down in the data center where it's hosted, absolutely, that's part of the boundary in here. But if it's based in your office, you could go down to Starbucks around the corner and access it from there. And so they're different services. You don't mix the two together. The next one, what we call location equipment services. This is kits within buildings, offices like here, that can also break. It could be this TV screen, it could be this shared laptop. And it's about how quickly you can fix that and replace it or repair it. Then you have your your end user services. So stuff that's assigned to you, your mobile phone, your device, your tablet. Again, similar principle. It's about how quickly that can be replaced or fixed. So you're seeing here already, you've got a service level around fulfillment, you've got a service level around availability and reliability, you've got a service level around resolution time frame. They're different services and they need different treatment, they're different patterns of activity. 2 more to go. We've got reports or data feeds. That's a service. If someone's created a report, they get sent at a certain time every day or week or month. That's a service that IT are providing. If it turns up late or corrupted or manipulated, it's an incident, it's broken. Someone needs to know about that and repair it. And the final one, you can't break, but it's very common, what's called department functional services. The most common one that in every organization is the service desk. The service desk people can see and interact with. They're providing a service of being able to provide an interface into IT. You can't raise an incident against them. You might raise a complaint, but you can't raise an incident against them. And their service levels will be very specific to that function. So it could be first contact resolution rates, it could be call abandonment rates, it could be time to pick up. They're very specific to that function. Once you get a grasp of that architecture, you can then put the structure around to provide great consumer grade experience. Okay. I'm probably at the top end of my time. I'll call it there, or maybe spend another 5 minutes on some of these items. I can take the lead from the room.
Do people want to finish there, or would you like to hear the rest of?
Just going to zoom in on the requestable catalogue. That's the only one I haven't covered yet.
No one's getting up and getting out of the room, so perhaps.
We've got the hard stop at 9 o'clock, haven't we? So the food and
Okay.
and things.
So maybe.
Okay, wrap up. So what I was going to go through next around the detail behind number 7 and what does good look like in that space very, very quickly. Must have a fulfillment workflow. Must have an SLA. Must have a cost, which is a comment that was on the chat earlier. Must have fulfillment instructions, so a work instruction in place, so that someone that's come in to that team that picks up that request knows what to do and can do it. You need to have a demand forecast in place so you've got the right number of resources in play. And the final one is a defined form. A form that's on your portal that ensures you draw out all the information you need from that requester at the point of them raising it. So you don't have ping pong of, right, I've got this thing, it's just a generic request. I need to go back to the user and ask for a load more information. It's just going to annoy them. So why didn't you ask me that in the first place? Okay, so that's a criteria to avoid what we call hand grenade requests. Hand grenade requests are generic, throw it over the fence and try and do something with it.
I think you've got to be careful with that. We're talking about consumer grade service. And so you might have loads of lists that they can select. And users go, well, I don't know what this has got to be. So again, I think it comes down to, you've got to keep it simple, haven't you? So
Exactly.
they have to understand what they're asking for, and they have to ask. You can only ask them, in insurance, you can only ask and expect a customer to give you the information that they could reasonably know and be able to serve you with. So
I agree. It's like when someone's filling out insurance to try and get a quote, something, what type of lock have I got? Is it a mortise lock? I haven't got a clue. What? Thankfully, most, especially Aviva, stopped asking that type of question out there. It's similar to your internal organisation. If you get your organisation, if you list all the different types of laptops that are available, why? You should have a standard laptop, a super laptop, maybe stop there, maybe Mac is your third option. And you'll have a package, a design that may change every year, but it's once a year you change it, but the request is the same. It's standard, or it's an enhanced, or it's an iMac. And that's it. That's all you present to the user. You don't present it's a Lenovo or an IBM thing, all that kind of stuff. It's just used to. So you're spot on. The way you design that form, the optionality you give, it's good to give them some options, but it's the degree of options that cause complexity. Again, there's some techniques that go behind that as well. And it all comes back into your fulfillment routing. Think about starters, movers, levers. That's a request activity. So how can you design that as a package? It covers more than just IT. It goes to facilities to set up the desk and the lamp and the fan. It goes to parts of the IT to set up the access. It goes to HR to set up the system record. That all falls into that space as well. So apologies for running short of time or running over time, not being able to go through that in a bit more detail, but hopefully that's given you a flavour of where that was going. That was the last part of it. Thank you. Any final questions? Thank you very much for your time. Hope that was useful.
Thank you.
Thank you.